got my notebook. Here we go. Raise your hand if you've ever gotten your heart broken and you let it devastate you for way too long, thinking that you need to find closure. You need it in order to move on. And I'm here to tell you that you don't. As I was looking for like heartbreak healing advice and things like that outside of what I had already written, I realized that it never got to the root. It's not teaching anybody how to get to the root, which is why you'll continue to get into the same situations over and over and over again, because the journaling helps. It does. Finding your hobbies helps. It does. But how do you get to the root? It took me years to get here, and I just have to lay it all out for you. So I really, really hope you watch this full through, because I do mean all of this from the bottom of my heart. So I got my closure about a decade later, and it was baffling. When I mean baffling, I mean I went outside of this world in that moment, and I told myself, like, this is what I was crying for. This is what made me miss so many opportunities. This right here, this moment, no, 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 no. So we cannot repeat this ever again. Him mentioning the situation, we just so happened to be in the same environment and saying something along the lines of like laughing. Like he was laughing, like it was so funny. It was so funny. It was ha ha ha, like, oh, you mad? Like, granted, it was such a long time ago, but I will digress into this. But in that moment, I left my body. In that moment, like as soon as the first like maybe 3 chuckles, I was just like, oh my goodness, like this is what I was ugly girl crying for 4 years. Like this is what I was ugly girl crying for in my car on the Loop Parkway, for this boy to just ha ha ha, this is a regular Monday. We'll get into it. So here's the tea. I am making myself as vulnerable as I can, because this is the truth, and that's just how we learn. And here we go. I'm not proud of some of the things that I let happen, and in order to move on, you need to look back and realize that you did and let these things happen and what you can do different. So my first relationship was a situationship, okay? Already starting off wrong. I was basically this person's Monday through Friday, and then after a couple of months, he had a Saturday, Sunday. And that Saturday, Sunday was known to the public. Like that was this person's person to the public. But I was the one driving us around everywhere, making sure we got to school, making sure all of these things. And again, I'll get into it. I have everything in a notebook because it's just, oh, so good. So I was set to join the Marines when I was graduating high school. If you saw my previous video, as I am mentioning the things that I've had to digest in my life, this was my moment of breaking free. Nobody understood. I was a brilliant kid. I just never really tried as hard. But every time I wanted to do something, I did it. So my guidance counselor was even like to me one day about having talked about me with her family, how she didn't understand why I wanted to join the military. And nobody did, because nobody knew anything that was going on. My parents went into the recruiting office and signed the papers because I was only 17. And to join the military, you have to be 18 years old unless you have the signatures of your parents. Mom went in crying, like, oh my God. My dad was just like, all right, right on. So I had already started my fitness journey. If you followed me, you know, I've always mentioned I started around the time when I was 16 years old. And this was the basic start of my fitness journey, because I had already been losing weight. Obviously, you're a teenager. I grew up obese, so that is something that I always wanted to figure out. And I'm just like, are people just like this? Like, why am I like this? So my biggest motivator was to drop the weight in order to go to the Marines. So where does this boy come into play? This boy was also set to go to the Marines, and I had a group of friends that some I knew that I had grown up with, and basically everybody was going to the military from the circle that I knew, which isn't why I wanted to join. It just so happened to be that like I found the circle. So we would go to the pulley trainings, which are the trainings that you go to prior to going to boot camp, to help you understand and get you in physical shape for it. Are you mentally ready for these things? No. So This boy and I were together all the time. We had to go to the same summer school class together, and we didn't live in the same town that we graduated from. We actually lived close to each other, just weirdly. So I would pick him up, and then we would go to the summer school at our hometown and go from there. Again, I wanted to be anywhere but my house, so it was just a friendship that just built over time. I needed help with losing weight and, just having someone to help me get on those runs and stuff like that. And it's always good to have a person to do it with you. And at the time, he needed help with his studies and stuff like that. We just happened to be in the same summer school class. I had never been in summer school in my life, but I needed to do it for English to graduate high school. So technically, I didn't graduate till August. So my worth, my confidence, everything was plummeting because I couldn't understand why I couldn't be the person that he showed in public. Like, why, like, was it, I tied so much worth to my weight in such like a great scale that it really made me believe that I was worth whatever I weighed, that people couldn't see me because of what I weighed, that I was this disgusting creature and nobody wanted me. I always wondered like why I couldn't be loved openly and shown openly. And again, this goes back to the root of my previous video of not having that open love from a mother, like not having that at all. Eventually, he starts to post his girlfriend publicly, and that's when I was just like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? Like, I would try to cut things off, and this kid would always come running back somehow. And at work, I had a job my entire high school life. I worked restaurants on the weekend, and I remember one time I was just like, what? Like, after seeing a picture of him with Art Circle and this girl, I was like, wait, what are you doing? This boy comes running, okay, to my job. And then it just led to all that confusion. Long story short, I don't know if this is long already, and he basically tells me that he's embarrassed of me. That was like the ultimate, like, just my heart just shattered because it's like, what is so wrong about me? Prom happened and we were just like low key together playing arcade games. And then afterwards, we dropped off all of our friends. Well, I did because I was the one with the car. And we spent our time together. Like, that was who I spent my time with. So to be told that I was embarrassed to be around just was like the cherry on top that I needed to just lead me down this slippery down slope, and not knowing that that is what I needed to grow. I developed an eating disorder that I couldn't shake. It was binging, it was purging, and that led me in this fluctuation of my weight. I was a cardio bunny. Because of that shameful feeling, because of that embarrassment, I felt like I couldn't eat regular foods in front of people. I felt like everything had to be in secret because I am probably so embarrassing. I felt so much shame in not being able to reach my goal, and I was running in garbage bags. I was doing like the wrestler's way. I was doing all of these extreme things and nothing was working out for me, along with the binging, the purging, and that eventually got worse. I eventually stopped answering phone calls from everyone because of how ashamed I felt about myself, how I must be again so embarrassing to be around. I stopped answering phone calls from my recruiter. Mind you, my parents had already signed the papers. My brother had also enlisted at the same time, so he ended up leaving. Like, we should have left around the same time. He did his 4 years. And then that's when I hit my deepest depression. I was in my room for I think like 3-4 months, just like not understanding what the purpose of life was. I couldn't even work out anymore because of how bad my eating disorder got. Like, I couldn't function, I couldn't run, my hair was falling out, my nails were getting yellow, my heart rhythm was just not feeling normal. And it ended up being to the point where I was like in my bathroom floor crying because I couldn't stop doing what I was doing, and I knew that that wasn't going to lead me anywhere. And I had no support. Like, the cries were heard, the cries were definitely heard, and nobody came to help me. So then I remember that day when I was just like on the bathroom floor. I got a bathroom and my mom was there, and this was all the support that I got. This was if you keep doing what you're doing, I'm sending you to the hospital. Word, got it, okay. Like, I'm doing the best that I can here, right? Like, with what I know. And I'm also, again, a child. I was 17 years old. I'm going to insert a picture of what I looked like because I look at this picture now and I'm just like, how? Like, how could I have thought that of myself? So the weight that I had to be for my height, I'm 5'2" ish, is 140 pounds. And at the time, think I was like the lowest 163. And again, I tied that so much to my worth. I stopped picking up those phone calls. And all I had to do was pick up the phone, because there is this like fat camp in boot camp that you go to make weight, and then you go into the regular boot camp area. But again, I just felt like I'm not worth anything, so I'm not picking up the phone. And this is an important piece, because not picking up the phone, like, that's all I had to do. And that's something I replicated in my life, leaving medical school, like just cutting ties with everyone. I had no sense of building connections, of building relationships, because I just felt like, who cares? Like, who cares about me? I always think about this day and how like things just happened the way they should, because had I gone to the military, would I have gone deep down into figuring out the things that I have? Would I have taken the time to learn down to the root of the things that like nobody had figured out, like how to find my voice? Would I have found my voice? I don't know. I just know that things happened the way that they did, and I feel like I'm in a place where I can help others in a way that maybe I could never have had I not taken the time to figure things out the way that I did. So we graduate officially summer school, and it's his time to go, right? Before this, he had told me again the sweet nothings, that, oh, don't worry, like after I graduate, I don't care who knows, blah, 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 blah. So I get a call that day, and I could tell that he had snuck away from everyone. And he basically just tells me, like, this isn't gonna happen. I love you. Bye. Deuces. Forget about me. Like, period. And that's the day I felt a sadness so deep that I had never felt before. And this part is important. I ended up vomiting. Like, my stomach turned. I went into the bathroom and I was just sick. I was crying. I was screaming. Again, did anybody come to check in on me? No. And this is the important moment, because this was the start of the generational trauma healing. And this is the part where I feel most people get it wrong about heartbreak. What he did was awful. However, that deep sense was coming from not him directly. It was coming from the pain from that I had already felt, the neglect, the abandonment from when I was a kid, and that moment had triggered it all. That was the moment that I finally cried out. Like, I was this like solid stone my entire childhood. I had no feelings. I would drink and just spend my day out, like just surviving and numbing out anything that I could. That this moment was just like the trigger, and it just all poured out. Everything. Obviously, I was 17 years old and hadn't done my healing yet. And I'm saying this from a perspective that I've figured this out years later. So it took a long time for me to be like, you know what, like that pain, it wasn't him necessarily, it was the neglect, the abandonment. And I was like experiencing that all over again with his like deuces, like forget about me, forget everything I said, even though like I had given him the go, like, dude, just peace out, we won't talk anymore. So that was the moment where it all started. I married the next guy that I dated, which I was married for about 4 or 5 years till I was 24-ish. I had my daughter, and I will never regret my daughter, because that was another part that helped me figure out so much of the generational trauma healing. I do regret that marriage. I just can only give myself grace, because I honestly didn't know better. I didn't. Nothing ended up making sense after I had my daughter. Absolutely nothing. Everything I knew was just backwards, and I was trying to figure out why I had such a hard time with life, like why I was having such a hard time with my daughter, especially when she was around 3 or 4 years old. So I knew that I needed to figure something out. If there's anything that I'm good at is pattern recognition. So like the patterns were just not adding up for me. Like I had the apartment, I had all of these things, and it was just, why do I feel so empty? And it was such an emotionless, empty marriage, and I thought that that was normal. There's a bee hovering around, it's going to be our friend, it likes the tripod. So nothing made sense around that time. And I figured when my daughter was around 2, 3 years old, I got back into fitness. I said, let me get back to it. I couldn't do one single push up anymore. It was really starting from scratch all over again. I didn't go back to being obese. I maintained that weight, but again, it was in an unhealthy way. All I did was cardio and just like minimized my calories. Getting back into fitness, I had found an influencer who I signed on to her program and stuff. And one of the things was personal development. I had never heard about that in my life. Talking to her, and that start, even though it was through social media, was really the start of me making sense of life for what it is. No less than 2 years pass after listening to the podcast, watching the YouTube videos, really trying to understand what healthy relationships are, what life is all about, and I got divorced. I was on my way to medical school, and I left everything because nothing made sense, and I was starting to make sense of things, and I knew that I needed to start from scratch. Started from zero. I went back home. I actually went to a couple of different places, but I left everything. I threw everything out, leaving the apartment and letting go of that. And that marriage is another story, but we're here talking about evolvement. The more I learned, the deeper I knew that I had to go, the more I would look at my daughter's face and be like, I can't have this for you. Like, no, you are brilliant. I cannot do this for you. And that is where the line between my respect for my mother is. As a woman, I understand, but as a parent, I could never. I could never. And that was the first sign of just me saying, I don't want this for you. No. I knew I had to be different. I knew I had to be different. And you can say, but I don't know what that means. What does that imply? And honestly, you just figure it out. And then you could say, but how do you figure it out? And you have to ask yourself the hard questions every day. Why did I let this happen? Why is this still going on? What about me am I doing? Am I not speaking up? Am I not 10 toes down for myself? What is it? You have to ask yourself these questions. And that is the hard part. And that is why people just would rather to stay stuck where they are than face the actual truth. Healing is exhausting. It is the most exhausting thing ever, and which is why so many people would rather stay stuck with what they know than doing the work to grow. And they live their lives telling themselves the same story over and over again instead of learning how to move forward. Why did I allow myself to constantly be yelled at? What figures did I have in my life that made me feel like these things were okay? What figures didn't I have in my life that should have been there? Why did I allow myself to pour so much into people until I was absolutely empty? Why didn't I know how to create those boundaries with people? These are the questions. Allowing myself to rewire my brain, even though I didn't know exactly what the alignment was that I needed, I just knew things weren't aligned. Most of these questions will have you go down into the rabbit hole of your parents. And this is the part that I feel like is always missing. And it's not for you to figure them out. It's not for you to fix them. It's for you to understand how you take that information and what you do with it, how you can change the dynamic of your life, of your kids' life, of the generations underneath you, because it doesn't have to be that way. And again, they don't see a problem with how they live their life. They won't ever until they do, until their awareness is brought up. But that doesn't mean that you don't have to be aware. So create those boundaries with the people that you need to for your own sake, for you not to live in the suck. You don't have to be stuck in the suck. And now, I'm not a licensed anything, but I do have this knowledge from just learning over my mistakes over the past few years. And these are the things that I felt like weren't talked about in all of the blogs and all of the things that I saw about advice about healing. So these are the 5 things that I have listed out that I feel like will truly help you. So number 1 is accepting the things that have happened the way that they have. We can't do anything with time. There's nothing that we can change. We can accept people for who they are, leave them there, especially if it's costing us our soul, and that's all we can do. And that's the number 1 thing, and it's not going to happen overnight. It might take some time, but as long as you learn to accept that, that is what step number 1 is. Step number 2 is to let go of fear of the unknown. So we don't know what tomorrow holds. We don't know what next week is going to be like, what next month is going to be like, but we know what we can do with the information that we have today, and what information that we can learn and know more of to help us for tomorrow. Number 3 is probably the most important one, and that is learning how to love yourself the way that you deserve to. It's not fair for other people to be tiptoeing around you because you don't know what you need. It's not fair for other people to have that responsibility to figure that out for you, because that's nobody's job but your own. Small details always add up, and if you don't know what your small details are, then nobody else is going to know what those things are. For me, that's a skincare routine. For me, that's taking my supplements. For me, that's drinking my protein. For me, that's fresh air, alone time. And it could be completely different for you. For you, it could be rock climbing, it could be knitting, it could be whatever it is, but you need to figure that out for yourself. That way people know how to show up for you. My boyfriend went to a gas station, had a conversation with the owner, and his mom has brought these bracelets from Turkey, and I thought that was really special. And he came back into the car with this bracelet from the gas station, and it's stacked on top of my Tiffany's bracelet. And it's like the one that has the chokehold on me because it was so special to me. Him coming back with a protein bar, him coming back with a lip balm, a lip gloss, like whatever it is, and it's just because he knows how to pour back into me when I need it. And he wouldn't know how to do that if I didn't know what I liked. That's your responsibility. That's nobody else's. So learn what it is that you like if you don't know. And number 4 is to give yourself a time frame of how long you want to be sad for. And you can agree to disagree with me on this, but there has to be a time, because I spent so many years being devastated over things that I should have put an end to, whether it's 24 hours, 48 hours, a month. Give yourself that time to cry and grieve and listen to the sad music and do all of those things. But there has to be a time where you need to flip the switch, because there is a point where you will leave that power in the hands of those people. And I don't think that we can work on ourselves so much to continue giving that power to those people. So take that power back and then start shifting to step number 5, which is empowering and educating yourself. So listening to the confidence boosting music, erasing all the sad. You don't have to believe these things to be true, but you can work your way to eventually believe those things about yourself, about this confidence boosting music. What are you listening to? Because all of that stuff definitely matters. And then educating yourself and taking the action with that education, watching the video, listening to the podcast, reading the book, and applying those things to your life, and being okay with the things that you don't know. You don't know everything, and it's okay to not know what you don't know. So give yourself permission to learn the things that you have to, and then apply them to your life. That way you can make it better. Not everybody is born knowing everything, whether it's financial literacy, whether it's understanding your kids, understanding yourself, whatever it is, you can take the action to learn throughout your lifetime. And so I hope that you take these tips and apply it to yourself. I'll have them written out somewhere. Subscribe to this channel, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.